Okay, let's try it again. Hopefully you're all here for revenue and fund management info session. Quick question for you. How many people were involved in the user acceptance testing phase? Anybody here? So the good news for people who did user acceptance testing, you are actually in the soft go live now. So you can go in and use revenue and fund management today. Words to people who didn't, join the user acceptance testing and you get goodies like early access. There's still a few things that are being tweaked up, so not everything is fully in place. But by August 11th, which is our official go live date, we'll have all those components working. Some drills and things aren't there yet. So we're going to spend a little while talking about the phases of Evolve Financial Reporting, how we've gotten to this point, and what our roadmap has been. It's going to be, and then you're probably mainly here for the demonstration of revenue and fund management. So we'll try and get to that as quickly as possible. So we're going to talk about the program, we'll do the demo, and then we'll talk about transitioning. What's it going to be like for users to start using revenue and fund management? This is a reminder of the whole program of using Evolve Financial Reporting, the idea that we can have one reporting system that works for all different levels of users, from the basic user who just goes in and a report runs for them and does what they need, the user who goes in and uses a couple of clicks to change the screens to get more functionality, the user who goes a step further and starts customizing their own screens to the way they want them to look, to the user who takes the next class and develops their own reports in the ad hoc environment, and all the way to the executive dashboards where someone builds a report for a different user to, kind of make high-level decisions and get to see that high-level view. So we're able to support all these different ways of doing reporting, and we're not locked in to just a single view like Report Mark 3. Well, Report didn't have one single view, it had about 1,000 single views, which was part of the difficulty. We started with payroll back in 2013, went to expense requests, consolidated expenditure reporting was the big push last year. Procure to pay, how many people have run procure to pay reports since it went live? How's that going for you? Any? It's just going. The really good news is you don't have to run a procure to pay report to benefit from it. Now when you run your expenditure reports and you see a purchase order and wonder what that is, you can drill into it. Now you can see what else is on that purchase order, what else is paying for that, so you've got this visibility. Actually, a couple of groups, particularly residential and dining, which does accruals, has found they can now vastly simplify their process of month-end and year-end, matching what they need for their accruals. What's actually come in, become an invoice, versus what has paid. So they can look at that GL period and see the things that have come in, but aren't in an actual expenditure. That's what they need to put into their accruals, which is net investments. Oh, I should say that the most important thing, we're about to have revenue and fund management. When's that going live? August 11th. So everybody will have August 11th access. Procure to pay, those are the 8 procure to pay reports. Almost nobody ran those in RM3. They were really hard. Most people have been looking at PO and Rec Query to get a lot of their information. Just a little push for procure to pay. Now you can search and find all your open POs, everything with a remaining balance, all in one view. So you may not have used P2P reports before. You very likely might find that to be beneficial now. We do have some videos on the webpage showing how those run, what they look like. Those reports in Report Mark 3, anybody run the Report Mark 3 P2P reports? They're going away next week. So this is your last chance. Run them while you got them. So what has been our approach to delivering revenue and fund management? It's been a long path. Came out and talked to 130 people on campus to get the requirements, what people said they're really doing in revenue and funds. Another 60 people actually looked at the mock-ups and gave us reviews back. Then we started reaching out to the business units. We invited for user acceptance testing 700 people. I think I've got another slide with the updated stats. I'll save the exciting numbers of how many people actually showed up of those 700. It was a big party. And then we're having a follow-up. We're having information sessions like this. We're creating lots of instructions, which will be available by August 11th on Fingate. And then after go live, we're going to have Q&A sessions. We're going to have some instructor-led when people have asked by departments. We'll come and do some special trainings. We don't have a particular class for revenue and fund management. The main path for learning about it is the web page. We have a big overview talking about business questions. We've got videos that you can watch for individual tabs, and we've got a quick start guide for people that like it on paper, so that you can see what's my tab, what are my business questions, what are the things I can accomplish. So you have multiple ways of getting that information. And then October and going on, we're going to be supporting in a number of ways. Newsletters that come out, the Friday Open Lab. Where is the Friday Open Lab? Just across the street, most of the Fridays of the month. So the first Friday of the month, we're actually up at Porter Drive. So if you're up at Porter Drive, you can just walk across the street to 3145. The other Fridays of the month, come to Birch Lab B, and you can look up that schedule on Fingate. In the resources, we have an open lab schedule. It gives you the address, the times, and locations. Always good to look just in case something has changed. Here we go, 703 people invited. 215 people actually came to a user acceptance testing, or joined the user acceptance testing group. We had 36 sessions, and we got 500 user days in the system testing. So those people found problems, bugs, and opportunities for enhancements. How many? 79 enhancements. So are implemented. So people got to come in and say, it'd be so much better if only, and 45 of those are already implemented, and we're going to try and get the rest. If not by go live, we'll keep working on the enhancements. And the enhancements don't have to stop with that initial batch. As people find things and say, this would really be better, we can actually make changes. Prioritization and limited resources mean that we're going to do the things that the most people need and that have the highest value first. Just the usual stuff about OBI. How many people are using OBI regularly? Just probably everybody. So you already are. What's your favorite thing about BI compared to Report 3? A lot faster. Bigger data sets. Multi-year. You can drill in. You don't have to leave the screen. Those drills give so much value. How many people here have salary view? When you want to look at a salary, say you're reconciling a sponsored research project, and you drill into that salary and you're trying to find out more about what that salary really was, the first time you drill on a salary number, it just kind of repeats the salary number. It's not that exciting. It adds 1 or 2 columns, F9 versus F12. Drill on that same number a second time. This seems kind of silly. You drill once, it shows you the same number. You drill the exact same number again. This time, it'll jump into payroll and labor management, and it will show you the entire paycheck, where all the pay went for that particular paycheck. And if there were a labor distribution adjustment, you'll get to see that on the screen with a link you can click into to see the full justification. So now you can do your reconciliation of salary much, much faster than trying to figure out what was that distribution adjustment, where the heck is it. In a few seconds, you can accomplish what would take several minutes in the past. So RFM, what's it going to have? Everything the 153, the 154 had: balances, revenue, as well as expenses, ending balance, plus something brand new, pledge data. So we're actually getting to pull data from postgrads for the first time. So this is something that we've never had access to before. I can't talk about that as well as I can the financial stuff, because it's other people who have been running it. So I don't understand the pledge data as well as I could at this point. But it does give you some really good insight into who's giving the money, if there's a schedule, when the money's planned to come. So we'll look at a couple of examples of how that pledge data is represented. Oh yeah, graphs. You now get some graphical representations of things like fund balances and over long periods of time. You could look at your endowment EN set of books for the past 10 years and see how are your endowments doing going up? How are your balances in your gift accounts over time? Now you can really get to some of that higher level review of how your area is performing and sliced in different ways, both by time and fund type and that graphical representation. And it's all here just in time for your end close. This gives you a sense of the reports. There's actually more than this. They're still being put in here. But what can you really do at year end? Since that's where we're at, there's an at a glance page. It kind of gives a little piece of most of the other reports all mushed into a single page. So you don't have to run all those different reports. You can say, show me my org, and you'll see your fund balances and your endowment balances. You can show you for your endowments what their balance will be once they've got all their projected payout. You could be 3 months before the end of the year and be in the red because of how much you've spent from your endowment. But if you could add in all your projected payout that's going to come, you'd say, well, I'm fine. I'll be okay by August 31st. You don't want to have to go through and calculate that endowment by endowment. So you get to see what your balance will be with your current expenses and all of your future payout. So that's a handy thing to look at year end. Transfer report. This is one I think gave me the biggest problem at year end in the past, was looking at all the money that was coming in from all kinds of places and all the money that was going out to all kinds of places. And it changed every single day during the close. And you're looking at your balance saying, have I paid yet? Have I got my money yet? Is this my actual balance? And doing all those extra calculations to figure out, have I got my payments in yet? And trying to extract that data from a 153 report that gave you way too much. Now I have a report that tells you just your transfers, just those 491s to 497s. So you can see what money has come in, what money has gone out, who do I need to go ping because I didn't get that money I need to have by now. Budget variance. So we've had expenditure variance from CER. You can see I was planning on spending this much in travel. I've spent this much in travel. Now you can see I expected to have this much revenue, but I've actually gotten this much. So this is a chance, especially at year end, to compare what you anticipated for the year with what your actuals are. So you can say, I really expected this year to get so many million in revenue or gift revenue, and that hasn't happened yet. You might want to go out and see where that's gone wrong. I expected a whole bunch of transfers. They haven't happened. Has something changed? What was different about what I expected? So not just expenditures, your balances, your revenue, all those big categories, compare your budget to your actual amount. Everything is in. That can get rather complex. If you look at a high level, just how's my revenue? That's one thing. You can see that at a much more detailed level. What is my transfers into operating, transfers out to operating? Gift revenue. You can slice that into a lot of different categories. That's great, but it's also kind of daunting when you look at things sliced so many different ways. GL journals, you can now see your general ledger journals. In CER, you can see your journals in the GA, your expenditure journals. So you see this food moved to that PTA. When you look in the general ledger, you have to think about the fact that there are no tasks, there are no expenditure types. The general ledger is at object, it's PFU, project, fund, object, org. So all those transfers, all those GL journals for food and other things, they're collapsed into just the object code. So this is not a good place to go look for that food moving from one place to another. Go look in CER for that. These journal details are going to be much more interesting for things like fund transfers, big level things. And we still have all the prior phases to help you at year-end close, making sure all your expenditures are recorded properly, clear your transfers, clear your advances, any of those completed trips, get them out of your travel card, transact those expenditure requests, What's the deadline this year? Anybody know? For getting extension requests, it's usually about the 15th of August. 14th this year? There we go. The voice of the FSC in the back. So, yeah, 14th of August. You know, start early. Find those, you know, go to look at your aging in your expense requests and SU credit card, so you can try and clear those. P cards almost always are going to be something that occurred in this year. It's very unlikely you bought something with a P card that's an activity for next year. So those really ought to all be cleared. It can happen that you've bought something now that's for the next fiscal year. So let's have a demo. Yay, somebody got excited in the back there. We've always said we'll have popcorn someday. We should actually make that happen once, Larry. It would really, you know, inspire people. Okay. Yes, that's still working. So here's the Home tab. This works similarly to all the other phases, that we've got some tabs across the top of the page. We've got more links going down the face of the page. There's just not enough room at the top. There's one issue. And some descriptions of what each of those links is going to do. Be aware that the tabs at the top, if you put some information into one tab and then you click another tab, it's going to bring what it can across of your criteria. I've selected these awards or this time. Click the next tab. It will do that for you and go ahead and run the report. This is great and terrible at the same time. If you forget what you had in one of the other tabs, like you've filtered everything just to be travel, and you jump to that other tab and now it's collapsed down, you can't see anymore that you're only getting travel and your numbers are all off, because you've carried forward that limitation from the earlier tab. So this is great when you're doing something complex. You don't want to have to redo it all. Bad when you don't realize that you're limiting yourself. How do you fix that? Oh, I'm not on the right page yet. I'll show you that, how to quickly get out of that problem. So across top are the big hitters, that at a glance, seeing everything at one time. It's really just bits and pieces of all the other tabs. I'm not going to really spend much time on that one because we want to see it in their native environments. Fund statement. That's your 153, 154, but now you've got both your EN set of books and your SU set of books in a single report. You don't have to go pulling them separately. Fund variance. So I talked a minute ago about variance. We've also got the fund variance. What's the difference? Fund variance, you pick one range of GL periods and compare it to another range of GL periods. Somebody's not muted. Sorry, something's coming through on the phone. So you could compare, you know, January and February this year with March and April of last year. Whatever your business process is, that's good for year end when you're trying to respond to your budget officer. How did this year compare to last year? So fund variance is the place where you can compare time periods. You compare not just expenditures, now you can compare revenue, balances. And endowment and donor. The endowment report talks only about endowments, and that's only the EN set of books. That's not your expendable. This is really, when you try and say, how are my endowments doing? Who's giving me the money? We can see some of that data in its own view now. So let's take a quick glance at the at a glance tab. There we go. A nice thing now is that we get an indication of when the last close was right in the report. That's an enhancement now, so that previously we couldn't see what the last close was. You weren't sure if you'd had the complete time period up to that point. If I see that the last close is May, that's because this is a test environment. It's not the real data. This environment only has a close as of May. So if I were to set my selection criteria at the top to be fiscal to date May, and I've got last close May, I know I've got a complete set of data for that time period. So I said in the at a glance, you get a little piece of everything else. I'm just going to quickly show these. So I've run this for an entire org. I could have run it for an award type. I could have run it for explicit awards. I can't do anything with task. There is no task number anywhere in RFM. Tasks, I said that wrong. In the GL, there's no task. So in here, I get to see all my award attributes very quickly, everything that's in my org. I can see, here we go, my fund authorizations. This can get a little bit long, so you're probably going to collapse that most of the time. How do you collapse it? There's a little arrow here on the side. You can drop that down. So this is great when you want to see, what should I really be spending that money on? Here's another thing. When you are looking at any of the reports and you see that award number in blue, drill on it and it will pull up the fund authorization for you. You can pull up details and the fund authorization right from the award number in any report. So you don't have to study them all here. You can look them up when you want them. So here is our SU. So everybody know EN and SU set of books? So the name now is going to be Journal Ledger Code. Just what it is. So you can actually, in some of the screens, select to only show the Journal Ledger Code EN and the Journal Ledger Code SU. EN, of course, you can't spend it. That's your endowment. SU, that's your expendable portion. It's still a single award number. I kind of wish it was a different award number, but it's one award number. Some you can spend, some you can't. So here is my SU. So what does this look like? This looks like a 154 report. Now I get to see at a high level, what are my balances, ins and outs. And again, I'm not going to spend time on this. I just want to point out it's here in this page. We go right into the endowment summary. Same thing, beginning balances all the way to the end. You notice your available balance on a endowment is always 0. You can't spend it. Here's that fun one where we can take an endowment. We can see how much has been paid year to date, how much is still to come. This data is old, so don't worry about those. How much was it supposed to be for the year? And here's that wonderful number at the end. What will my balance be after I've got all my payout in? Now, some more expenses could still come into this. This is not telling me what my anticipated expenses are going to be. But once I get all my funding in, what's my balance? If it's red, I've definitely got a problem. That's at year end. August 31st. That's once you've got all 12 payments. Here's a fun thing. Now we're getting into those graphical representations. It's a little bit tricky that we're used to looking in a box like this. And here I can change which kind of graph. There's a balance graph. I've got my beginning, ending available. I can change and I can do a stacked graph. There's an important thing about the stacked graph. When I see my pluses and my minuses and I get my net number right there. So here I've got some receipts of 955,000. I've got some transfers out of 357,000. It kind of looks like for the September timeframe, I've gone in the negative about between $1 million and $1.5 million. That's because the scale for this line is on the right-hand side of the page. It's a different set of numbers. On the left-hand side of the page is the scale for the colored blocks. But this line, the scale is over here. So it's actually only a delta of 300K. So don't get confused that those two scales are different. So here was the tricky thing I mentioned. Up here, we get to see that it's showing the report by GL periods. If I had selected a lot of data, I'd probably want to see it by fiscal year. So I control right here the way the axis down here is represented. You kind of don't expect it because you think all the controls for this box are going to be inside this box. several places in RFM, you're going to find that that control for your time periods is in a box right above the box you care about. So if you can't find a way to reduce it from 60 columns for 5 years down to 5 for 5 years, look above, and that's where your control is going to be. So there was my my trend for my SU set of books, and here's the same thing for my endowment. Nothing's happening in there at the moment. Now I get into my endowment information, my shares, my value, how much have I got, how many shares have I got, what's the book value, what's the market value. Every one of these numbers is drillable. So when I see that I've got 9,000 shares in this endowment, I can drill on those 9,000 shares and I can find out when I got them. Did I buy them all in a single purchase, or did those come over time? So I'll get to see all those journals, the header, the transaction detail, and the approvals for each one of those purchases. And so what we have here, we had a couple of purchases 2 times, all in August of 2015. And here's the details. And you can get those journal names and the batch names as well. Endowment. Transfers. I'll just point, this is where you'd get to see the money in, the money out. Everything here is in a different report. Pledge summary. Yes. So, so the question is, thank you, Larry, are we going to see the appreciation as well as the what's called earnings? So you won't see the earnings and appreciation until you just see your payout. So when you say I got X payout this month, it'll actually show up as a portion of it is earnings, money that's actually come back in, realized gains, basically. And then the rest of it is going to show up as something called, I just said it wrong, earnings and appreciation. Appreciation is just the stock value went up. Nothing was sold. So you haven't produced any real income. You don't really need to care about that for the most part, because the fact that we have to keep track of how much that is earnings, how much depreciation, doesn't change the fact of how much you're going to get every month, because you're still going to get that payout. But it has to be calculated how much is earnings, how much is depreciation. And then we get to see a little bit about the pledges. So this is all in a single view called at a glance. If you really want to do any work, you're probably going to go for a single tab and work in that area. So let's actually see some of those tabs. There. So in the fund statement, this is going to be the exact same things we saw before, but now it's just separated out in all the detail. So I was pointing out that here we have our 154 type report, and this is in a view of just the totals, but we have a whole bunch of different ways that we can change this view. So it'll redraw these columns for us. So here we start off in the totals, but we could say, what if I say only the awards? I could have projects. I'm going to only the awards and object code subgroup. I'm going to get a really wide page now so I can see all those numbers broken out by much more explicit categories. Instead of just saying transfers in and transfers out, I'm going to get to see a lot more fine detail. Is that a transfer? So here we've got receipts, other additions, transfers operating, transfers other, transfers out operating, transfers to capital. So now you get to see really in kind of gory detail, and any of those numbers you want to see what it was, like if you see a capital, you could drill on that number and get to see what's the journal that actually put that to capital. So again, this is that kind of 154 view. And then the endowment, similarly, we can see that in more detail. How many people really pay that much attention to their endowment? I mean, like looking at right down to Yay. I just want to say, is the money still there? Is it growing? You know, so depending on what your process is, you can look at it that high level view, or you can really get into the blood and guts of what's inside there. So here's that same merged pool. I think this is exactly the same as in the at a glance page. Most of these things are almost the same as on the at a glance. So details. This is your 153 report. This is where you see every single line, what actually happened. And again, here's that box above, which controls how the box below is displayed. You can do more than just the subtotal by, which changes over here, the left column. This is the real big changes you can make. So now, whenever you see the word legacy, that means we're trying to make something look like the old report. So it's going to be as similar as possible, in this case, to the 153. But there are other ways you might like to see it. Like there's a view just for the central office. We can see just everything grouped by ins and outs, so that every inflow outflow is in kind of one batch, every outflow is another batch. And so that will change how some of these columns are represented. And this gets kind of long. I don't want to click on this because there's a lot of rows. So that can get confusing because you'll need to pay attention a bit to what you're in. Like in here, I'm just in expenses. Oh, and here is, I didn't want to do that. So here's my roll up at a high level. I've got this object code, and here I am going month by month. The total amount of expenses in that object code are rolling into the general ledger now. I don't get to see what comprises everything of 51, 50, 502, but how much it was per month. In a different report, we'll look at the detail for that earnings and appreciation. The name of the PI. So if you are in this gift, if you're in this project, and you drill on the details, award owner subtotal. Oops. Oh, add award owner. Subtotal by, oh, there we go. Award. I'm just slow today, manager. There we go, award owner full name. Lovely, thank you. This one's really easy, yeah. So now this column over here is going to change and become award owner. So now for the dean, I'll get everything for the dean, and then down somewhere further below, I'll get that subtotal. So great, that one's cool. I haven't done that one before. Excellent view, thank you, Matt. So that was the SU fund statement detail in the subtotal by award owner full name. Questions so far about this? Is it making sense, like what you would get for your business process, your 153 versus your 154 reporting? And then we can get the same thing here. I've collapsed this, the endowment. So here's a trick. I have saved this report as a customization. I collapsed the endowment detail. I'm now expanding it so I can see it after all. And I see this clock. The clock means nothing. It will never finish looking. It's terrible they use a clock. It should say, click the apply button to get this data. You have to open these things, get the clock spinning, and then go back up to the top and hit apply. It's just rude. Ha, I fooled you. So never wait for the clock. It's really handy to collapse the things you don't want to see. If you're not really paying attention at the endowment level, you know, save your customization. And when you come back, run your customization. Don't wait for these other things to apply. Don't have them take up space on your screen. Just a quick reminder, once I've built my report the way I want to, I've added included, excluded, subtotal. I go up here to the gear menu, and this is where I can say save my current customization. Exactly the criteria I put at the top for my filters, exactly how I rearrange stuff down below. And every time I want to get this report in the future, I just go and say, apply that saved customization, and I'll get all that stuff back. One thing that can be handy about that is when you put a fiscal year to date and you put in February, then March, then April, then May, you don't want to always be going back and seeing February's data. If you really just want year to date as of now, during the year, you'll see the list gradually growing. But you notice it doesn't have August yet. I can still type August. And I can say, I have to hit apply. Until you hit apply and get it, it won't actually save. You actually have to get your report once. Then you save it. And for the rest of the year, it will run fiscal to date, August 31. So what does that really mean? It's always going to look from September 1 of that fiscal year through August 31 of that fiscal year. It doesn't care that I'm only in February so far. It's just going to find everything. Much easier that way. So did we get data down at the bottom? No, we didn't get data. It'll give us a lot of gory details about that endowment, exactly what is coming in and out of it. Moving on. Oh, this was that, I think this is the drill we did. Yeah. Once I've drilled, I can actually see, you know, a little, in some cases, a little breadcrumb that could get me back to see where did I actually come from on this. Your drills are going to open into a new tab most of the time, so I drill on them and just close them. Otherwise, I get cluttered with tabs across my page because there, yeah, it comes from the fund statement. Okay, that was fund statement. How about the fund trend? This is exciting. This is something that, you know, was really hard to do in the past. They tell me about my, especially things like balances for the last 10 years. You know, your director says, how are our gifts doing? Well, give me a couple of days and I'll tell you. Actually, I'm going on vacation. Somebody else is going to do that, even better. So you can, instead of saying your fiscal to date, you can say, give me a beginning and ending period. In this case, I've gone for September 2011 to August 2016. So I'm getting 5 years for an organization. Remember, here's my box up above. I've already selected this one to go from GL period instead to fiscal year. When you first run this for 5 years, you're going to have 60 columns across the page. It's really hard even to see where things are when it's 60 columns wide. And when you want to change this view by to say year, and it's 60 columns wide, where is that little control for making it say years? It's in the middle of the page. So you have to kind of eyeball your elevator at the bottom to slide halfway through, and all of a sudden that little control pops into view. Yeah, or you just do 1 year first, so you can still see the control and say, do it by year, and then go after a bunch of years. But just be aware that when you're 60 columns wide, your controls are still there. They're just in the middle of the page. Okay, so we've got this by year. So what's going on here? I've got a trend for an award. So how does my trend actually work here at the numeric level? It's much more fun in the graphical, but let's look at the numbers first, because you people are analysts mostly. You love tables, right? So I've got a beginning balance, receipts, transfers in, out, expenses. Okay, here I've got a fund balance. So at the end of the year, there was this much money in the fund, and there's some net investments. So what is net investments? What kind of things are net investments? Travel advances, P cards, travel cards, things that you have spent but you haven't actually transacted yet. Really, this is the difference between cash set of books and accrual. You know, we're kind of an interesting business. We work on cash. We've got a cigar box, and we're getting money in and putting money out. And we just look in our cigar box at how much we've got. You know, a regular business doesn't do cash transactions. It says accrual. You know, I've got this stuff in, I haven't paid for it yet, but I need, you know, your checkbook at home. You're doing accrual. You look at how much your, you know, your bottom line is, not how much money is in your bank account today, because you've written checks that haven't cleared yet. So the net investments is that adjustment between cash set of books and accrual set of books. So those organizations which have to accrue their expenses, cost centers, people that have to say, what is my true revenue and true expense for this time period? They've got to accrue all that activity into net investments. All the labor, all the things they've received, haven't paid for yet. Most people, like in the departments, you don't have to worry about accruals. It's really travel advances, SU P card, and SU travel card are primarily what's in here. So do you really have $112,000? Yeah. You might have to pay $9,000 in the future. So when it says your available balance, this is just kind of your guarantee. This is, you know, I've got at least this much money. But what's my beginning balance going to be next year? Is my ending balance 112 or is it 103? Really, it's the 112. Look here. So the fund balance at the end of 1 year is the beginning balance for the next year. And that cost here, that net investment, it's probably somewhere in here in the expenses. Okay, so we've got this little flow, beginning to fund, back to beginning, and across the page. And we have that for a whole bunch of awards, and we can drill into any of these numbers and see everything that constitutes this $22,000 of receipts in FY14. So that's cool, but it's a lot of detail. Same thing for endowment, everything in and out. But now we can start seeing, this was a 5-year trend. So now I am going by GL periods. So there's actually 60 GL periods in here. And I get to see, you know, kind of representation of all those months across here. So here we go. What's the balance like during the year? You know, the balance is going up and down. So we're spending, spending, spending. And maybe at the year end, we're getting a bunch of transfers in. So that balance is jumping around a lot. It might be a little more interesting to say, was it like on a year-by-year basis? Because all that volatility, you could have awards that are going negative for a good portion of the year until you finally get the funding in at the end of the year. A bit more interesting really is to say, what would this look like year over year? That's a lot more reasonable. And the difference between these two graphs, now I can see in any particular year, what did I begin with? What did I end with? How am I doing? Same thing with your endowment. It's nice to see the endowment going up. Yes. Oh, so the year end set of book. Yeah. So yeah, this is just the principal. So the question is, what are we seeing here between these two graphs? We've got one for the SU set of books, and we've got this one for the EN. So the EN set of books, this is just your, well, actually, we've got both the beginning balance and the ending balance for the principal that you cannot touch. Yeah, that's SU, this you get to spend. So all that money right here, go out and have a really good party, as long as it's got a good business purpose. It's all in the purpose. Okay, any questions on fund trend? While I'm here, let's look at this next button, and we'll find that there are additional criteria we can use to limit the data returned. So here I started with an org. And remember in CER, you can put your org in, and then you also have to say, what's the perspective of that org? And you have 3 choices, award, project, and task. So in RFM, you only get award and project. You don't get to see the perspective of task because we don't have tasks. So what's the default in CER? What org is the default in the CER reports? It's task. When you start off on any page in CER, this perspective is pre-filled with task org. When you're in RFM, it's pre-filled with award org. So why would we have award org for RFM and task org for CER? Because expenditures occur at the task. Expenditures occur at the task. So really, when you're trying to work on your expenditures, the things that you need to reconcile, the money that you've spent, you'd say, show me every task which has my org. Now, when you're trying to talk about your balances, you're thinking about it the other way. You're going to say, find every award that has my org. Now, sometimes somebody else is spending your money, usually because you've told them to. But in this case, you want to see all of your balances. And so that's why in your in the old Hyperion reports, the whole section at the top says that the type based on award owning org. And then when you look at the expenditures in the lower portion, it's got those little words say based on task owning org, and then it has that funky little adjustment down below, trans org, activity. Because when you want to say, here's my balance, here are my expenses, and it does not add up to your ending balance because somebody else spent some of that money. So there's that separate little row that says, oh, by the way, here are all the expenses that accrued to your awards in a different org. And it's just that one little number down there. It makes life a little more difficult. Okay, so I expanded to the next screen. And now look at all these different choices of things I can now filter on in order to get the report I want. Suppose I really want to talk to my director about my gift award balances. I don't want to see my endowment balances. I want to see my gifts. So I could go up in here to my high level type and I'd say, just show me my gifts. I could also say, really, we're concerned about our unrestricted gifts. So now I could go in here to my level of restriction and say, I just want unrestricted gifts. So now you can start building the kind of report that really addresses a particular business question. How are these kinds of balances? Because the great big balance is interesting. It's a lot of times more interesting to look at some of the individual ones as well. How's my sponsored? Well, actually, I wouldn't look at sponsored balance. Sponsored's not in here. The fund statement, the 153, 154, that's only for non-sponsored activity. Really, your sponsored balances don't have a lot of meaning because they're being billed and returned, so you don't really, people do look at their accounts receivable, do want to make sure that their billing is being paid, but you're not going to look at it in your fund statement. There we go. I can go after my unrestricted that way. Any questions on these values here? It's good to poke around in some of these, and you can click the search button, and it makes it a little easier to see all the different values that are in there. Decide which level do you want to work at. Do you want to just look at all sponsored, or do you want to look at it, fed, non-fed, foreign? So you can have that level of control depending upon which of these you choose. How many people have used the little pencil button here? This is a huge thing that with the pencil, yeah, we were talking about this yesterday in class. Usually a gasp from somebody about the pencil button. You can just paste in a long list of PTAs or awards or categories. You can keep that list in an Excel document someplace else. When you paste it in here, you don't have to put all those semicolons. You can just be carriage turns. I heard you said you can actually do it just with tabs across the page as well. Yeah. It'll even do that. You can see only like heading of the column. Yeah. So you can take the row in Excel as well as a column in Excel. So I've never tried it that way, but this is huge. You just paste that list in, and when you say OK, they're all filled in right here. Actually, I can do it this way. I can pull them all in, and I'll show you what it looks like with the pencil. There they are. That list could have been anywhere. So very handy way to get just the data you need in whatever way you select that. Show me all my, well, not in this case. In expenditure reporting, you could go after every unallowable every unallowable expenditure type, just to see how much unallowable have you got going on. Okay, that's enough on the fund trend. Transfers report. So I've got a teaser about this one. There is actually a summary table for this report that it needs some rework. So I can't show it to you right now, but that summary table allows you to see all of your to and from. I can actually show it to you. Fingate videos, transfers, backup, and better. I think I have a picture of it in here. There it is. It's a little bit cut off. So here is the summary report that I ran on a single gift. And I can see that there was transfers going off the edge of the page from expendable gift to an operating budget. So the gift was funding an operating budget. And I can also see over at the right here, there's the sponsored column, that some of the money was going from the gift to sponsored activity. What kind of sponsored activity are you paying with a gift? It was some university research. You could drill on those numbers and see the details. Even easier, you just scroll down the page and we'll see all the details below. Here is the reverse going on. There's from sponsored research going back into expendable gift. Some research projects ended and had remaining balances. That money had to be returned to the gift from which they got the money in the first place. If it had been funded years ago, this used to be sometimes quite a challenge to figure out where the heck did the money come from for this university research. So you would run this transfer report on that university research award for the time period, the entire time of the research project, and you'd get to see all those transfers to that university research. Now you could drill in and find out maybe it was a couple of different transfers and 2 different organizations were funding this. Now you get to see those 2 separate journals, drill on that and get the journal numbers. And now when you do the reverse transfer, you can refer explicitly to the transfer number that brought the money in the first place. If it was a couple of different groups, you could make sure that you return it proportionally to the groups that had funded it. So this is really good for your justification for that reversal thing. Why am I putting this money into that place? So that is the summary page. The real meat is down here in the details. So what I say, there was some money going, oh, here's my columns. I've got my from and my to, my debit and my credit. So I've got money going from the gift to the operations, and I've got my dollar amount. I can drill on the dollar amount and actually get the details of the journal of why that funding was going on. You'll see this a lot, journal header, journal details, journal approvals. But now I can find out that there was some money going for operations. I've got my journal. There we go. I can find right down to the project where that funding was applying. And here's the other one. The gift was putting money into the sponsored research. Here's some sponsored research returning money back to the gift. That's all everything you need really to find out what was going on, money in and out of this award. To me, this is a huge, huge benefit for finding stuff that took a long time to find before. Question about transfers. I think this is a real game changer, especially at year end. Endowment and donor. Remember I said before that when we look at endowments, everything on this page is EN set of books. You can't spend anything on this page. But you get some really nice information. What did I run this on? I ran it for 2 months, December to January. If I run it for a lot of months, you actually see a lot of data because it's going to show me in my details month by month by month. Okay, so the difference between pure shares and quasi shares. Pure shares are your endowment money, stuff that you've gotten that really is just locked up that you can never touch. A quasi is actually money that's been brought into the merged pool. This is the merged pool B. Almost everything new is going into merged pool B. There's other merged pools from older stuff and some specialty things. But suppose I had some money built up in my expendable portion of my endowment, and I would like to reinvest it. I can buy shares with my payout. When I buy those shares, oh yeah, when I buy those shares, they're purchased as quasi. Also, if I have a fund functioning as an endowment, if I've got a wasting endowment, term endowment, those shares are also going to be here in the quasi. And Matt was pointing out this is a good opportunity to put a pitch for the DG Center. So the DG Center is the location where all information about data is stored. So when I see something like, what was my term there? Quasi, yeah. I can simply search on quasi. So I say dgcenter.stanford.edu, darn good center, damn good if I'm really feeling, you know, my oats. So here I find the term quasi. It's a code value. And when I drill on that, this is a work in progress. All this data is manual. If you drill on something and you find it doesn't have a description and you know what the thing is, there's a little comment box at the bottom. You can tell us. Just be aware that it will show up on the page then with your name attached for everybody else to see until the administrator actually does something with it. So, you know, just FYI. So here we can say shares invested per request of an internal university party, not the donor, unless it relates to a term endowment. There's that donor who said, here's some money. Guess what? You spend the payout, and over time, I want you to spend the principal. You've got 10 years, spend this stuff. But during those 10 years, please earn some interests. I don't want you to just put it in your mattress for the next 10 years. They'd like you to get something for it as well. I'm not going to read the rest of it. You can read on that about your quasi shares. Oops. There. And actually, look at this. I've picked these 3 endowments for a specific reason. K-Bay, it's pure shares, but it also has some specific investments. So the donor gave us some money that's cash. It's in the endowment. It's earning payout appreciation. They also gave us something which cannot be invested in the merged pool. In this case, I think it was a limited liability company. So Stanford has that asset, but it's not earning money with the rest of the investments for that endowment. So it sits there in this specific investment. So it's not part of the merged pool, doesn't give us payout, but it's part of that endowment. Eventually, this will usually be sold and turned into shares. So K-Bay has pure and a specific investment. KASQO has pure and quasi. So this endowment in the past managed to buy some additional shares. I can drill on those additional shares to see how that happened. I think I drilled. Try that again. So that's going to think for a minute. So we'll get to see how those additional shares got in. And then here, KVMR, this one is only quasi shares. So this is one of those term endowments. The donor gave us the money and said, eventually I'd like you to spend the principal as well as the payout. I didn't manage to get that one running. It was purchased in 2 separate installments. Back in 2011, a little chunk got there, and then a big chunk of money got saved up and then reinvested, and that now funds like 2 fellowships every other year. So, your endowments, you're typically trying to spend them every year. That's not always feasible. Sometimes you end up building up, and sometimes you might end up reinvesting some of that payout. And the pledge report. So this is that brand new concept of being able to see data from post-grad. You'll have to pick your time period in one of these 3 ranges, either the due dates, the recorded dates, or the transaction dates. I kind of like the recorded dates because some things may not be transacted. Really, I just want to see everything that's happened, so I tend to use the recorded date. And I've gone all the way back to 2003 to find everything which is stored in Oracle. So now I can go down, and here I've got 2 different endowments. Well, I've got, there are endowments, but there's pledges of payments towards those endowments. So the first one got $1.2 million original pledge. The current pledge is still $1.2 million. Nothing's changed since they originally made the pledge. 400 is paid, 800 is left to be received. I can scroll down a little bit and say, look, here we go. The plan was over these 4 years to get these specific dollar amounts. The first 2 have paid, the second 2 are still pending. I got a pretty good sense I'm going to get $800,000 over the next 2 years. I can do some planning in anticipation of receiving that money. The other one had an original pledge of $2 million, actually received 1.5, and there's basically nothing left on this one. So something changed. We go down and look. Here's our details. It looks to me like it was supposed to be $400K a year for 5 years. But in the 4th year, it was only partially paid, and then the remaining balance was canceled. So for whatever reason, the donor is not going to complete that original pledge. So when they pledge, it's not sure you're ever going to get the money. So counting your chickens before they're hatched is a little bit of a question. How confident are you that money is really going to come in?
Can you go to the left?
Well, what do you want to see?
I want to see if it has the donor name.
It does. I don't want to show it to you.
Okay. No, I just was wondering if it was there.
It's there. You caught me. Yeah. So it will have the donor name. And actually, up above, we can search by, there it is. We can search by the donor name. The box down below says concatenated donor name, because a lot of times you'll have a couple of donors. So you could search for John Smith, and down in the concatenate, they'll say John and Jill Smith, because they both have components of that gift. A lot of times, married couples will split their pledges so they each get their own component. And if you know the pledge number, you can even put the pledge number in. Questions about pledge? No, this pledge is, so is this only in endowments? No, I just happened to pick a couple of endowments because endowments tend to get paid over time, so it's easier to find one that had a schedule. A lot of times gifts are just, one big number, it'll just have a single date. So no, you could do your entire org. You'd get to see every pledge of your org. Lots of them are more boring. Like you might see some big dollar amount and it's, payment date is 2037. Seeing one of those, like, well, this person's going to give this money over a long time. The pledge just says by 2037, $30 million. It'll show all of them. Questions about the demo? Anything about revenue and fund management? Do you think you're going to use it for year-end close? Please do. This is your only chance to see a year-end close with Report Mark 3 and OBI. Please test it out. Use it as much as you can.
So, I mean, I've only played around with this in ad hoc.
Yeah.
And in what you've shown us, I haven't seen any one report that would show for, let's say, a particular PFU, all of the, let's say within a year's time frame, all of the transactions at the detail level.
Oh, so the question is, if you were looking at a single PFU, or all the way down to object, or
yeah,
all the way down to object. Okay, so if I wanted to see, you know, a specific project, fund, object, org, all the nitty-gritty details, I would go to the fund statement. I would pick my selection criteria at the top. Is this the right one I want to be on? Yeah. So I'd say, for example, this fund, A, B, C, D, E, this object code, 41110.
Well, I mean, to
Yeah.
see all of them.
Oh, everything for across like a whole org.
All the GL activity.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, let's go back to this one that I had originally, which is right here. Okay, so here I've actually got a whole org. I've got my summary, and when I get down here into the detail, here's my fund statement detail. And so in this view, I've got my my legacy view. And that's probably, so this is showing both the award and the project. That's kind of ugly long. You might want to only do it at the award level. When you expose the project, you're going to see your project 1 million numbers, which can get a bit confusing. So let's scroll down a little bit and say, show me the whole thing. So I'm going to have a lot of rows now. Actually, kind of wish I'd picked something smaller. So I'm going to see for each of those major categories, like transfer, I'm going to see all the transfer activity.
And is there a description field?
You can see immediately, I think you can include the journal description. If not, you can drill to get the actual real journal detail.
Yeah, but then you'd have to drill for each one, right?
Yeah, so here, this one is the journal line descriptive text. So here I've got like my to this, so like these receipts. You're going to get, click on specific journals, which words you get. You get the shorter description in here. Have I got everything now?
And so what about like accounting reference and department reference? So I'm just wondering if there
how
is
much
a way
do you
I
get?
can use this versus going into ad hoc.
Right. So I'm going to quick cheat a little bit and say, this is probably something I will share with campus because it addresses a bit of your question. So this is an Excel workbook that has all the tabs, all the reports, and for each of those reports, we're just in the fund statement, every section, and for every section, every single field that you can include.
Yeah, you've shown this to me before, except I probably forgot how to access it.
Yeah, it's not really easily accessible. It's in a box folder, and I have to tell you the name of the box folder. It's OBI Fin Resources, stanford.box.com/OBI Fin Resources. I'm eventually going to try and get this cleaned up, and we're discussing how to make it look pretty, and then put it in the resources folder of Fingate.
Okay,
So,
I think it looks pretty right now.
Yeah, well, you know, it's people that like data, this is great. People that need like instructions at the top, headings, titles, we have to make it look, a little better. So in the meantime, I tell people where it is. It's there today at stanford.box.com/OBI Fin Resources. If it's ugly, don't complain. If it's pretty to you, tell me.
Thank you, Kern.
You're welcome.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Actually, here's the one tab that has everything all at one time. So now if you know there's a field, I remember for P2P, I wanted the batch number because I had some reporting that had to be by batch number. I couldn't figure out which the heck tab has, only one tab has batch number. So you could search this for batch number in that case and find it. So your question was here in the fund statement, and we were in the details, fiscal year SU statement detail. And the question was, what kind of descriptions have we got available? Object code award says journal line descriptive text as far as you're going to get. And then you're going to have to drill on the journal to get additional details on the journal. So you're going to get that 30 character or whatever description.
Okay, great.
Sure. If there is a data field which you think is really useful, this is one of those enhancement opportunities. Is there something else that would really make that work better for your process? Let us know. I need to keep moving because I'm getting the sign that time is almost up. I have to finish the presentation and say, what is the transition going to be? So everybody that has RFM access in report mark 3 is going to get that automatically added for OBI. Anybody who after that go live on August 11th wants additional authority for revenue and fund, have to go to your department financial grantors to get that authority added. How do you find out about granting authority? We've got some training here on the Fingate page, and we're going to email this presentation to everybody who signed up today with a student ID or something legible that we can find you. Sometimes we can't find you. So you can go here and look at some of the guides about how to grant authority. So once you take Fin 340, you have to take that before you get to see anything in OBI. Then you have dashboard access. You can take these additional classes if you so desire. You know, once you've really exhausted the dashboard and find you've bumped up against things you cannot do in the dashboard, then you can sign up for the ad hoc class. We really like people to sign up for the ad hoc class after they've used the dashboard quite a bit. Somebody's only used the dashboard once. They sign up for the class, say, well, I just have a learning path. We say, no, we've got too many people and you can't teach somebody who's only looked at the dashboard once, because you have to really know the dashboard to learn it in ad hoc. We have lots of resources on Fingate, videos, overviews, quick starts, crosswalks. The task mapping is kind of cool. It has, for RFM, I think there's 50 business questions, like how do I find all the gifts I've received this year? And it gives you like the 5 steps. Go to this tab, do this thing, pull that report. Kind of fun just to look through the task mapping because there are questions you haven't really thought about before. Yeah, Jane was just doing it and going, oh, this is cool. I hadn't thought about I could do that in here. So you can look through the list, try and find something specific, or you can just scan the list and get ideas of how you can use the tool. So where are all these things located? They are in Fingate. How do you get here? You go to staff, and there's a little thing on the side that says learn about systems. Click on that and pull to OBI reporting and immediately bookmark that. This should be one of your favorite places to go back, because eventually you'll find that nasty or very pretty Excel table I just showed a minute ago under resources. So each of the areas has a number of and increasing number of resources associated with it. As we're finding things like that Excel table that really help people to visualize what they can do, we're going to put those in there. Oh yeah, here's all the cool stuff you can get, and we're going to send you OBI newsletters. Be sure to read those. If you didn't read your newsletter, but you remember it had something in there that I really wished I'd paid attention to, 3 months ago, now I care, I wish I had it back, you can get it here in the OBI News Every OBI news we've ever sent out is there in the archive. So you can go back and find those things. And there's one of our newsletters. We try and tell you some insightful story and important things in our boxes. These are lab, right? Lab. There's a point to the pictures. You can thank Larry. Here's that open lab, or here's other resources. We're going to have another 3 information sessions. Once we get going, we'll have Q&As. Then people will have actually done it and come back and say, how do I do this? You can always call the Financial Support Center. You can send a help ticket. There is a good way to send a help ticket. If you just go to Helps You, it's really hard to get the ticket to go to the people that actually know BI. But when you are in BI, oh, where's one of my tabs? Why am I? There we go. In your tabs, you'll get this little help box here. If you click the Help SU here in this box, it will open a Helps You ticket and pre-fill it with the stuff you, of course, would have said: administrative applications, BICC, financial reporting. Now you know. Forget that. Just click it from inside the tool and you'll get the Helps You ticket to the right people directly. Gets you your answer much more quickly. There is also this help button. It's not going to go where it should yet. Right now it's going to say coming soon. When you click on that, it'll take you right into that report overview in Fingate, which has lots of great information about all our reporting environments. Fingate OBI reporting. I'm going to do one real quick, because in the report overviews, a lot of times people don't realize that each of these things actually drills into a whole lot of information about that subject area. If I drill into P2P, I get to see what that home page looks like. If I go look at AP invoice, I find cool things like business process. What are the business questions you can answer here? What are all the things that I can do for my views? What kinds of things are in there? And there's the video showing how to use that tab. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. So you can go in and find out, how can I be using this tab well? And you can get that right from that report when you're in BI. Not everything has a video. And Open Labs, as we already mentioned, and they're here in this report as well. 1 minute. Any questions? Short questions.
So we can provide comments. How do we do that?
Oh, so back there at the DG Center, when you are in a, I think I closed it. When you are on a page, at the bottom, there is a button called Comment. And so here I've got the page. I realize this says X, it really should say Y. I can scroll down here. I can look at the comments. Oh, and it's at the top. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you can see the comments at the bottom. You submit your comment at the top. Give your name, your email, and then you get to write whatever you want to write. And whatever you've written will show up right down here in this box. And that gets reviewed by the people who are administering the DG Center. That answer your question?
What if, like, if we want to see certain features on the dashboard?
Oh, just in general, how do you reach out? Help SU is probably the best one. Yeah.
Really encourage you guys to let us know how to make better.
So the question was, how do you make comments or requests for enhancements? Open a Help SU ticket. This is for the people on the phone. And just put that information in the Help SU. And that gets to Matt's team like in one step. Okay. Thank you all for coming. Use it soon and often.
Thanks, Kern.
You're very welcome. Boy, you know, turnout is so much better today. We had 12 people last week. Yeah, it was the afternoon. They were sleepy.
Well, people, are taking vacations. Now it's getting close to it.
Yeah.
Probably be some more of them.
Well, I've got a problem actually coming up.
I know that is why.
And 1 week ago, there's 12 people showed up. We got bumped out of the room. I wondered how we're going to take care of this. Just pick one of the small rooms. It only seats like 18 people. If this happens at Porter, we're hosed.
Well, it may not, because people have to get up there.
There's people already there.
Yeah, I know.
Those are the people we serve up there. And I hope they're not interested.
Okay, well, good luck and thanks again. I'm sure you'll be.
Yeah.
The problem is, I don't use this stuff on a regular basis because our project, is a 2-year, we're just beginning to start our cost study.
Yeah, I mean,
And actually,
pretty good odds you're
yeah.
start from dashboard, get close, find all the deal things, how you want to look.
Yeah, well, actually, I took your ad hoc class and then I went back and, I started recreating my DSS report. Then I copied all the SQL, because I think you suggested that, and I pasted it into another document.
Yeah.
So now when it opens up, I'm just going to copy the SQL, paste it in there, and I'll have my reports ready.
Oh, that's probably the last report.
Okay, thanks.
Take care.